Hi guys, I am coming to you with my November wrap up. So originally I wanted to do like my curly hair routine, do like my November wrap up, just make it like really, creative, like something different. But I'm actually filming this video at 11 o'clock at night and actually like been to work. The red shirt isn't just like a festive thing, it's my work shirt. Today I'm going to be doing my October wrap up, and I read 37 books in October. And I'm so happy. Like, I mean, I pretty much always read like a lot, but I just love that I read so many books, and I read so many like great books and like favorites and new authors and new favorite authors, like a lot. So if you have been watching me for a while, then you know when I read a lot of books in a month, I split it up by genre because I typically read a lot of different genres. So this one is actually going to be split up a little bit weird. So I split it up into paranormal romance, science fiction, fantasy, so that's one group, horror/thriller, that's one group, and then Stephen King, because I read a lot of Stephen King books. But let's talk about my stats. So I read 5 5-star books, 4 4.5-star books, 7 4-stars, 2 3.5 stars, 9 3-stars, 3 2-stars, 1 DNF, and then 6 books I didn't rate. And so I read 11 paranormal books, 2 romances, 11 sci-fi fantasy books, 2 horror/thrillers, and 9 Stephen King books. So the DNF book, I'll talk about it with you guys now. So I actually DNF'd Wolves of the Kala. This clearly is a Stephen King book. It is the 3rd book in the series. I technically didn't like hard DNF this book. I just wasn't very interested in the book. I'm not a character-driven person, and so I've been hearing that the series is a character-driven series, and in this book I wasn't really feeling it. Like, I do like the characters, but I don't love the characters, and I don't know the characters enough to finish and read 7 books if every book doesn't really have a lot of plot lines. I am going to continue the book, just not at the moment, so it's not really a hard DNF. Now let's actually get into the books I read. So we're going to start off with paranormal romance, and the first book I have is the X-Hex, which I gave 5 stars to. I love the X-Hex. In October I kind of read a lot of like the paranormal romance genre, but they're like different from like the other adult paranormal ones, you know, like the ones with like the Black Dagger Brotherhood or Fever series. Like, there's nothing wrong with them. These are just more like, I don't know how to explain it, I don't know, but these just like this book and the other book I read, or the other books that are coming out, they just feel and read different. I don't know how to explain it, but I really love the X-Hex. The X-Hex is about this girl named Vivi who is just kind of broken up with, and she's feeling very sad. So her and her cousin decide that they want to hex her boyfriend, her ex-boyfriend, as a joke until it actually works. And then you follow 10 years later when the curse actually, like, I don't want to say it kicks in, but because he's back into town, the curse happens because she's in his life, basically. So whenever the closer he is to her, the more the curse has an effect on him. So they're working together to end this curse. The next book I read is Not Your Average Hot Guy, and I gave this book 3 stars. And that, like, there's nothing wrong with 3 stars. I just expected to love this book, and then when I read it, I just wasn't really feeling it. So basically, the Not Your Average Hot Guy is about this girl whose mom runs an escape room, and in this escape room there's this weird cult, and they decide that they want to summon a demon, which this is not the only book I've read this month where there's a weird cult that's trying to summon a demon. Anyways, so she's trying to summon a demon, and well, actually they're trying to summon the devil, and they end up summoning Luke, who's the son of the devil. And so it's basically just them working together and trying to get this book back that these people stole, because it was used as a prop in the escape room and the main character had no idea that it was real. So I give this book 3 stars because I just felt like there was no chemistry in the romance, and it was just weird because I realized that when the male character was like, oh, like, I'm so intrigued by her, and I was like, what's intriguing about her? What do you like about her? What do you know about her? And then I wasn't convinced from the romance then after that. But I do like the plot, so it's gonna have a sequel, so I will read the sequel because I did enjoy the plot. The next books I read were the Ice Planet Barbarian books. I read books 2, 3, 4. I skipped 5, 6, and 7. So I skipped 5 because it was like a Christmas book, so I want to save that one for Christmas because it's really hard finding Christmas books, so I'm trying to save them for as much as I can. And so I pretty much like the series. This series is about these girls who end up being kidnapped, and they all basically have like no family in their lives. They're basically orphans, and they're kidnapped by these aliens. And so the aliens that they end up falling in love with are not the aliens that kidnapped them. The aliens that they all fall in love with are the aliens that saved them. So now they have to live on like this really ice like planet and adapt to it. And I liked it. I basically read it because I wanted to read the one with the black girl, but I read all the way up to 6 with that one. And then I ended up reading 7 because I actually ended up liking it, but I had to stop because I got a bit bored. And there's like 20 books in the series, and I just like, it's like I like them, but I didn't rate any of them. So yeah. And then the next book I read is A Shadow in the Ember. If you want to hear more in-depth thoughts on this book, I do have a vlog for this one. And this one is the newest series in a Flesh and Fire, so the prequel to From Blood and Ash. You do not need to have read From Blood and Ash to read this book. And like I said, it's basically the prequel. So this follows Nyktos, and Nyktos is a god, and Sarah is originally sent to kill him, but she's sent to marry him and like secretly kill him, but he ends up canceling the marriage. And then she ends up meeting him again a few years later, and they actually end up like becoming very interested in each other. Neither of them realize who the other person is, which I don't really understand how that worked, but I digress. I still really love the book. I love this book a lot more than I like From Blood and Ash, because this one I just liked Nyktos a lot more. I care about the relationship. No, I don't care about any couple's relationship. Like, I think book couples are cute, but I never like, oh my gosh, like they're to die for, you know what I'm saying? So usually if I like a book couple, it's usually because I'm in love with the male in the book couple and not, or the girl, but never both of them. Anyways, I don't have time to be going on tangents. Like, I really have to keep these short and simple, so I don't know why I am. But yeah, I gave this one 5 stars. I really loved it. You can watch my vlog if you want more in-depth detail. So I gave this one 4.5 stars because, and not 5 stars, because I just remembered that I realized that this book felt like a carbon copy of From Blood and Ash, but not in a bad way. But I just feel like, me knowing Jennifer Armentrout, she tends to be really repetitive, and so Sarah is a lot like Poppy, and they both like always ask a lot of questions, or even the romance is similar. But it makes sense as to why these things are similar in this book, because this is the first ever maiden. Like, Sarah's the first ever maiden, so it really explains, and other things that happen, it really explains why Sarah and Poppy are very similar. So it doesn't really annoy me, but I also seen a lot of repetition in this book in general, so that's why it got 4 points, but it didn't deter my liking from it. So then I read Her Soul to Take, which I also gave 4.5 stars, and this one is a paranormal, obviously it's like I call it like a dark paranormal romance, because it's not like the X-Hex. Is very, very dark. It is about a girl who is in college, and this kid turns up dead at the beginning of the book, and she's just like, what the heck? And there's this like security guard, and he's like kind of weird, and she's kind of like liking it. And then she ends up like being involved with the security guard, and then you end up finding out that he's a demon. You find out from his own POV. So then it's basically about this cult who is killing people to go to their god, and the demon is working for these people even though he doesn't really want to. He's working against their will, and there's this book that they're looking for, and now that it's not in the hands anymore, he doesn't have to work for them. And then they want him to kill her, so he's like, no, like that's my girl. So it's a romance book. It was really fun. This is not the first book by this author I read this month, and I really enjoyed it. Next book I have is Born Sinner, which I gave 2 stars. Absolutely hated it. This one is about this girl who can command people by telling them what to do, and they have to listen to her. And these people feel like she's evil and dangerous, so they kidnap her. And it reminded me a lot of Shatter Me in a way. I don't know why, but I didn't like it. I didn't like the romance, and I thought that it was corny, like how the author was like, the author wouldn't tell you what she was in the beginning, and it would have made sense if she knew what she was, but she didn't know what she was. So you're trying to extend, like, you know, you're trying to keep the audience guessing, but I don't think that's the kind of thing that you can keep an audience guessing for, because it actually really just annoyed me, and I was like, okay, I don't want to read this book anymore. Then the last paranormal romance book I read is Fangs, which, just like everyone else, I love Fangs. Fangs is a graphic novel about a vampire and a werewolf that falls in love. It's very funny, very relatable to me. I don't know if anybody else can relate to it, but I have a lot of like dark humor, and I feel like in another life, in like another like fantasy world, I was like a vampire. and I just really relate to like the main character. She's very funny, and like I love the romance. I love werewolves. So the next book I read was The Dare, and this is by the author who wrote Her Soul to Take. I gave this one 5 stars because it was so good. It's basically I think it follows Halloween night, and this girl goes to this party, and this guy that she used to bully slash had a little fling with in high school shows up there, and he basically shows her who's the boss. It's pure erotica. I loved it. A lot of people on Goodreads were like, oh my gosh, this book is so, it's banned actually. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, like this book is so disgusting. And it's like, it's not really like, if like, I don't know, it's not different from like any other book that I've read, because I read a lot of eroticas and I read a lot of like smutty books, so it's not different from anything I've read. It does focus a little bit too much on humiliation. Like that one I was kind of like, I'm not really feeling it. But other than that, I don't get why it was banned, and I don't get why everyone's talking like as if this was like the most disturbing book I've ever read in my life. Like whatever, but I really liked it, and if you're into erotica and like dark stuff, you definitely will love this. You definitely should check it out. I also read Haunting Adelaide, which was a stalker romance. I read this for a vlog. This one is about this girl who lives in this haunted house, was haunted manor, was passed down to her, and there's this guy who sees her. She's an author. He sees her at a book signing and he becomes obsessed with her, so he starts stalking her, and it's just insane. Like I had to give it 4.5. I give it 4 stars, not 4.5. But I just had to give it 4 stars because it was so entertaining. And there's also like a storyline of her great grandma who, well, I think it's just one great. It was a story about her great grandma who also was being stalked, and she finds her diary and how she like fell in love with the stalker while she's falling in love with the stalker. And it's also like this mystery of like who killed her grandma. It's like a really interesting book, and like it also has like ghosts in the house. Like it's like a thing, and it was just good. The book was just too long. I just feel like there's no reason why this book should have been 600 pages, you know what I'm saying? So at one point I did end up becoming more interested in the storyline following her great grandma than the actual romance, but I'm very intrigued to see where the second book goes, I guess. I don't know. And then on to my science fiction fantasy. So the first book on that list is The Last Graduate, and I gave this one 5 stars. Of course, it is the sequel to Deadly Education, and this is my UK edition. I got it on Book Depository in case anyone's ever wondering. So anyway, so I gave this one 5 stars. I'm not going to tell you what this is about, but I liked it. There's a cliffhanger at the end. If anybody's going into it, I'm letting you know this right now. Deadly Education is about this school that doesn't have any breaks. It doesn't have any teachers, and you basically, it's the monsters there, and the more friends you have, or even if you have friends, the longer or the more likely you are to survive. So the main character, she keeps getting saved by this guy named Orion, and she is getting irritated by that, so she plans to kill him, but they end up like, she ends up using him because he's always saving her and he's super nice to her, and she ends up just saying like, telling everyone that it's her boyfriend, and that's how she gains friends, and like his friends become her friends, and then she actually gets like genuine friendships, and I just loved it. And then in this book it focuses with her trying to get everybody to graduate, and not everyone in your class like survives the graduation, and she is determined to get everyone in her class to graduate, and I just love it. And I love Elle. She's just my favorite character. Like, so I read the Red Rising trilogy, I did not read the other 2 books. So I read Red Rising, Golden Sun, and A Morning Star. I gave all of these books 3 stars. I don't know what it is. I think it might have been the audiobook, but I just did not love, I can't hold up all these books obviously. Just did not love all these books as much as I thought I would. Like, everyone loves this series and says it was so good, and it was like, I like some of the characters and I like the plot lines. It just, something wasn't clicking for me. And I talked about this book in one of my reading vlogs. I think I talked about this book somewhere, and someone basically said that I probably should read it physically or listen to the ebook, because that might have, they started the audiobook and it turned them off, so they read it physically and it helped them. I was listening to these all at work over the weekend, so I just didn't think to like read them physically. And so I think I might reread these and give these another chance, and I'll see if I'll continue on with the series. Next, I finally read Starsight, and I gave this one 4 stars. I also read Sunreach, which I also gave 4 stars. This is the second book in the Skyward series, and then Sunreach is the second novella, or the first novella. The other one came out and I did have a pre-order, I just haven't gotten to it yet. And so, because the novellas, like, for them to be novellas, they're like 200 pages, like, it's long. Like, yeah, this is the follow-up to Skyward, so I'll just tell you what that one's about instead of this one. So Skyward is about this girl named Spencer who dad is a pilot, and this is a science fiction book. So her dad is a pilot, and he ends up basically like getting scared and running away from this mission, and everyone calls him a coward. So her family is like basically made fun of because her dad's a coward, and she also wants to be a pilot. So she goes into the Skywards. I think the school is called Skyward. She goes into the school, and everyone like doubts her, and she's basically trying to make her, what is the word I'm looking for, clear her name, I guess, clear her family's name. I really love this book. I liked Sunreach, but I felt like it just felt a bit different. Like you can tell that Brandon, because it's buddy written, co-written, and so you can tell that Brandon Sanderson didn't have his hands all the way on it. I read A Fae and Flame, which I gave 2 stars. So I wanted to read this because I saw it was like a fantasy book by a black author, and I want to support the black author, and I really felt so bad giving this book 2 stars. It was so bad. It was boring. Nothing was going on. It's about this girl who felt like she was like bad luck, and she's like on this mission, and all of her friends die, and she wakes up and there's this guy who's like guard castle, and so he like has her like tied up and stuff, and they end up like falling in love. It was very boring. I didn't care. So then I read Dune and Dune Messiah, which I gave 4 stars, which I don't really know, like I kind of want to raise them to 5 stars, or at least Dune, because I did enjoy Dune Messiah a little less than Dune, but I still enjoyed Dune Messiah. And after reading Dune Messiah, I enjoyed Dune a little bit more, which is why I want to go back and rate it. So I read Dune. I finished it the day the movie came out, and I also think that the movie helped my enjoyment of the reading. And so Dune is basically this book about this family named the Atreides, and they are sent to live on this planet that also starts with an A that I literally forgot. Well, the planet starts with an A, but it's essentially called Dune, and they're sent to go live on there, and it's a setup. It's a setup, and the book has a lot of political intrigue. It's heavy on philosophy, and after you read the second book, you realize that the series is actually about why you shouldn't put people up to the standards of being gods, but because people have only read the first book and seen the first half of the movie, they think it is a white savior story, and I don't agree, but that's just me. I really like this book. Duncan, Idaho, and I nicknamed him Big Daddy Duke Leto are my favorite characters, and it's a lot more that goes on in this book. A lot of people found the book boring, but I found it very entertaining. Like I said, it focuses heavy on philosophy, which I really enjoy, like why people think the way that they do, why do people act the way that they do, and also the portrayal was good for me. Like I don't know, the portrayal in the first book, I don't get how people call this book boring with the stuff that happens in the, I just don't get it. I don't understand. I liked it, so that's good for me. I'm continuing on with the series. More Dune for me, I guess. And then I also read The Night Circus, which I gave 5 stars. So I do have a paperback of this book, but I love this so much I had to buy the hardcover because it was so good. The Night Circus is about this circus that comes around, like you have to catch the night circus basically, like you have to find it, and it's about these 2 people who are competing to be like the best magicians ever, and they actually end up falling in love, and it's such a beautiful story and it's so beautifully written. And when I was reading this on Goodreads, somebody was like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared about it. I also read Kingdom of the Curse, which I buddy read with Cat from Babina Katarina, and I gave this one 3 stars. So this one is a sequel to Kingdom of the Wicked, which is about this girl whose twin sister dies, and she thinks that this demon does it, so she's like set out to kill him, and then they end up working together, and the demon is like one of the 7 deadly sins. They're like set to find out what happened to their sister. So this is the second book, and I gave this one 3 stars because I just didn't like this one as much. I mean, I just think that character Maniscal writing is just not that good, and I'm only sticking around because I really like the romance, and the audiobook does make it a lot better to listen to. But it's just like when I got home and finished it, I don't know why I did that, because I should have just kept listening to the audiobook, but it took my enjoyment of the book down. And it was just like, I just think she needs to just be a regular contemporary romance writer. Like historical romance is not for her, but I still liked the romance, and I like the banter. I think her banter is like so good. So my camera overheated, and I decided to take a break and eat hot Cheetos. So if it looks like I ate hot Cheetos, it's because I ate hot Cheetos. Anyways, on to the next book that I read. I read The Alice's, which I gave 3.5 stars out of 5 stars. 3.5 out of 5 stars. And this one, which genuinely just me being generous because I was so disappointed by this book. Like, this book is about 6 people who are recruited by this guy named Atlas, and one of them has to die, but they all have to be like, they all end up becoming friends with each other, but one of them has to die so they can be recruited into this thing that's called the Society, which is never touched on what the Society is, to be honest. So I gave this one 3.5 stars to be generous because I did like the characters, but I am not a character driven person. I do not like the characters enough to be like, oh my gosh, I loved Nico, 5 stars. Oh my gosh, I love Parisha, 5 stars. Oh my gosh, I love Libby, 5. These are all my favorite characters, by the way. So I still liked it. I just was really disappointed. I thought that the writing was pretty meh. I think that the author was trying too hard to be like, this is what adult books feels like, but it made it feel more childish because I feel like the author's never written an actual adult book in her life. I don't mean that to be mean, sorry. And also the magic system was really confusing. It wasn't really explained. Like I said, the Society wasn't really explained. Like, this book really could have just been a dark academia book set in the real world. Like, the whole, if you weren't going to explain the magic system, you weren't going to explain what the Society is, there was really no point to get these people to become friends just for one of them to have to die. And I don't know, I just things. But I gave it 3.5 stars because, like I said, I did like the characters, but also I feel like some of these things can really be fixed in the second book. Like, I feel like the author could explain the magic system in the second book and could explain what the fuck the Society is in the second book. So it's really in hopes that the author explains this stuff. Now, I don't know what I'm gonna do if I read like the whole trilogy and nothing is ever explained, but I have high hopes, and I'm basically giving this person 3.5 stars off of hopes and dreams because this book is so hyped and it's a dark academia book and I wanted to like it, and I feel bad because I don't like it, essentially. So the next book I read is Summer Suns. Whoever said this book is dark academia is a liar. It's not. So this book I gave 3 out of 5 stars. I wanted to like it. This book is a gothic horror. Like, it has everything that, like, you know, I would want to like, but it just wasn't really clicking for me. I think because I went to this book thinking I was going to get a gothic horror, and I did see somebody say it was a dark academia, but I didn't see anybody like anything else about the book. So I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know anything about this book. Like, it's gothic horror. I go into this book, they street racing and doing drugs. I realized that everyone kept comparing this to the Raven Boys, and I think that's why I didn't like it, because it was very similar to the Raven Boys. And also, the Raven Boys was also very character driven and not plot driven. And I think for me, this book was I should have, like, I feel like I always go into books and not knowing what they're about, and it always is just fine for me, and I usually end up liking it. But I think for this book, I really should have known what this one's about going into it, because I should have known a little bit more, because all I got was a gothic horror. But when I came into the book, it wasn't really a gothic horror. Like, it was nothing really gothic about it. It had gothic feels sometimes, but it wasn't gothic horror. So I feel like I was just really let down by this book, but I will be giving the author another chance, and I'm just really sad that I didn't love it. The next book I read is My Best Friend's Exorcism, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars. So I only have one more Grady Hendrix books to read, and then I'll have read like every Grady Hendrix like book. I mean, I could read Paperbacks from Hell, but that one really isn't like a book for real. So this one is about this girl who best friend okay, so it's about this girl and her best friend, and how they all go to the pool one day, and her best friend is taken over by the devil. And after that, her best friend's like really weird, and then they realize that she's taken over by the devil, and like their friendship with like the other 2 girls in their friend group was ruined, and even the friendship between those 2 were ruined. And it was just really good because you saw the 2 main characters, like you saw their friendship like happen, like you saw when they first became friends at the beginning of the book, and like as it builds up to high school. So then like their friendship is ruined, and she still cares about the girl because they've been friends for forever, and it's literally just her, and they have to give her an exorcism. And this book really reminded me of Jennifer's Body in the sense of, now don't go reading this and being like, oh my gosh, why did this have a Jennifer's Body feel? No, I said it reminded me of Jennifer's Body because it shares the similarities of friendship, and how like in Jennifer's Body there was Needy who saw that there was something wrong with Jennifer and she wanted to help her, but Jennifer was like, no bitch, like I'm minding my business, mind yours. And it, like I said, it was just really similar. Like, it just was really similar. Now I don't say really, I think it was really similar, but if you don't get the Jennifer Body's vibe reading this, then I didn't say anything. It was really cool. Grady Hendrix, I really like, one thing I really like about Grady Hendrix is that he mixes good topics. I really like when horror mixes interesting topics, or deeper topics. So like in this book, the topic of like friendship mixed with horror. Like I love when he mixes other things in with horror, and it's not just ooh scary spooky, it's like life lessons a little bit. And so now we're gonna get on to Stephen King. So I ended up reading Stephen King because I read Salem's Lot, which I read for a vlog. Half of these books I read were in vlogs, so just watch my vlogs that I upload this month because I uploaded a lot. So anyways, I have a vlog for this one. This one is Salem's Lot. This one is Stephen King's second novel he ever read, and I have read Carrie, so I think I just need to read The Stand, and now I've read like, I don't know, I've read a lot of his books. Yeah, this is Salem's Lot. This one is about this guy who moves to Jerusalem's Lot, and he ends up like, well, he moves back to, he lived there when he was younger with his aunt, so he moves back to Jerusalem's Lot, and he realizes that the town is just a bit different, and then there's these vampires that move in. You don't really know if they're vampires, but there's these vampires moving in, and it's just a topic of how how the neighborhood reacted to vampires. I gave this 3.5 stars. It was like okay, like I didn't hate it, I didn't love it. I kind of wish it focused more on like the vampires a little bit. But one thing I really like about Stephen King, I learned, is that what I said about Grady Hendrix, is that his book focuses on deeper topics. So like a lot of times his books will focus on good versus evil, and like neighborhoods and things like that. So I also read The Institute, which I gave 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really love this. This one is about this kid who has, he kind of has this ability of, I forget if it's telepathy or telekinesis, but they have like one called TK and then TP, I think. It's about this kid who has like these abilities, and he ends up being sent to the Institute. And in the Institute, he has like this room that looks exactly like his room, and he ends up realizing that he's not home. And then it's just like this institute that keeps these kids, and then once you're at a certain point, you go to this different room which nobody knows what they do in it, and nobody ever comes back from it. So basically once you go there, you lose all hope. And it's just about him being in this institute and making these friends, and there's this woman who works there who ends up becoming a friend, and how like evil these people are. And I really like this book. I think that it really reminded me, everyone was saying that this was like Stranger Things, but this one, to me, because I'm a comic book nerd, so any comic book nerds out there, it was more like X-Men, to be specific. What the fuck are the bitches called? The New Mutants. So especially the movie, but like the movie was terrible. So if you haven't seen the movie and you're like, oh my gosh, I love the Institute, I'm gonna watch the movie, don't do that. But if you have seen the movie, I am so sorry, but basically it's this, they're similar to me, but like better. Like, you know, if you've seen it, then you understand. So it reminds me of the New Mutants. I really liked it. I had a lot of fun reading this. It was really good. Of course, Stephen King, I think the reason why I didn't give this book 5 stars is because he put the N-word in there, and as I'm reading Stephen King, the more I'm just like, I hate to say it, but I'm like so desensitized to it. And I know why he does it. He writes like these, he doesn't just write like the N-word, he'll write like homophobic things, sexist things. He does it to show that these characters are the villain. So he never just writing these words or these terrible things just to write them. But I feel like I'm excusing him, and I don't think that it's okay, but I just got so used to it over time that it's just like, I know it's coming, and I don't know, Stockholm Syndrome. I also read Under the Dome, which was 1,000 pages. I read this one in like 3 days, and this one is about this town that has like this dome that goes over this town in Castle, I think it's near Castle Rock. And one day there's this guy, and he's just like riding through it, and I think he's there for like something, and then this dome falls over it. So it's like, it's just how like these people and how they reacted to the dome, and like good focuses heavy on good versus evil, like very heavy. There's this guy, his name is Big Remy, and he's just like one of my favorite like Stephen King, Big Jim Rennie, I think his name was. Big Jim Rennie, and he's like one of my favorite villains because he's just like so out of there, and he's like insane, and it's just like what the hell. But his son on the other hand was like absolutely, this book was just like crazy, and like so many things went on. I ended up giving it 3 stars though. I feel like this one was too long, and even though I really liked it and really enjoyed it, I just feel like the book kept losing me, and I just feel like Stephen King could really use an editor. But now that I know that like it's just how Stephen King writes, like now that I'm more into his books, I can appreciate this book a little bit more, which is why I did that. I just read a bunch of Stephen King books because I know that the more I go on, the more I can appreciate his writing. And I'm so used to his descriptiveness and his books being long for no reason, that now that I read his books, I don't be like, oh, this book was like so long. Like, it doesn't need to be this. It doesn't need 5 stars. But I did really enjoy Under the Dome. It's such a cool concept. It is really long though, but I liked it. I then read 2 books in the Dark Tower series. So I read The Gunslinger and the drawing of the 3. So I gave the Gunslinger 2 stars and the drawing of the 3 I did not rate, and I'll tell you why. So I gave this one 2 stars because nothing really happens in this book. It's very boring. I mean, it is the first book in the series, so it's really short, so you can get through it really fast, but it's really about this guy, the gunslinger, who is looking for the man in the black or something like that, because he wants to know what the Dark Tower series is, so it basically follows that. And then the second book, which I gave no rating to, I did like the drawing of the 3. I thought it introduced so many cool factors in the book. Like, we have the main character Roland, who enters this guy's body, and the guy is like this drug addict, and he's on this plane, and he has like these drugs on him. So the guy is like, yeah, these people know that you have it, like, go in here. And you can, it also deals with like portals and like doors. So he's like, yeah, go into the bathroom. So he goes in the bathroom, they hide the drugs in this portal, he comes out, and people are like searching him, and he's like, the guy's like, what, dude, like, you know, you keep your hands off me, like, whatever. And I liked that. I thought it was fun. But then we got introduced to the black female character, and that's when the rating for it went downhill. That's when my enjoyment of the series went downhill. I could not bear it because the N-word was just thrown in there so many times, and it was just like, oh my god, it was in hard R this, in hard R that. It was one time, it was like, and 3 times in like one sentence, and I was like, okay, Stephen King, you're just throwing out this word, like, you're just going, he's just going crazy, going stupid with the word. And I'm like, okay, man, we get it, please, you know. So I just couldn't, like, I felt so uncomfortable, and I just felt so sad. And it's just like, I know that Stephen King, he isn't racist, and I know that he just gets so into writing, and he puts these things to show how villainous a character is. But as a black woman reading this, I just could not. Desperation, which is one of my favorite Stephen King covers, because if you know, you know. I gave this one 3 stars. So this one is about this town in Nevada, and it is about these people who go through Nevada. They're going through this town, and this police stops him, and he kills these people, and he's basically being taken over by this demon named Tack. And it's basically just them trying to, like, hit this police officer bringing these new people in, and these like random group of people becoming, like, you know, having like try to save themselves or save each other, and this demon named Tack that's just like really insane and trying to kill these people. And so I really liked it. I just felt like it was a bit long, and I kind of got lost in the story a little bit. Like, I did get really bored, and like when I think of this book, I just think about how much I was dreading it and how much I wanted to finish it. Like, it's a really crazy story. It's very like unique, very like cartoonish, but it was fun. I had fun reading it. I think once I get more into Stephen King, I would go back and reread this book, and maybe my enjoyment for this book will be a lot more. Like I said, Stephen King writes amazing children, so there's a kid in this book, and he's just like the savior to all. Like, I don't mind. I love Stephen King when he writes kids. Like, he's just so good at it. It's like he's still a kid. I don't know how he's so good at it, but he is. I then read The Mist, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. If you don't know what The Mist is, every time I think about it, I don't know if anybody watched Fanboy and Chum Chum when they were like kids, but there's an episode where they're like mocking it, and then he goes, The Mist, and like every time I think about that, I think about that episode. And so yeah, if you don't know what The Mist is, it's basically about this mist that happens and it kills people. So I gave it 3 stars because I thought it was like, okay, you know. And then I read Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption, and I gave it 4.5 stars. I loved that short story. I loved it. My 2 favorite Stephen King books are named after both of my grandmothers. Dolores Claiborne, because my late grandma's name is Dolores, and I love that novel. And then Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption. My other grandma's name is Rita. And I just think that is so funny how like my favorite Stephen King full-length novel and my favorite Stephen King short story are both named after my grandma's. But in short, everyone calls it Shawshank Redemption, and it is about this prison. It's about this guy who goes to prison, and something happens in the prison, and so you're trying to learn out what happened to him in the prison. And it's basically just how he, like, what happens, you know, where this guy is, and like what went on, and it's told from another person's perspective. And it's just like, you're just learning about this prison. You learn about how he went to prison, which was insane. You learn about how the other guy went to prison, which was insane. And then it's just also like the story of the guys in the prison, and how the other guy that's spoken on, like, even though he was like this guy who like was like a typical everyday guy, he wasn't no bitch, okay? He wasn't no bitch, and he wasn't letting these people just do whatever to him, no matter what it was. And I just liked the book. I thought it was really, really fun. It was short, And even if it is short, Stephen King, his descriptiveness, I'm really used to it by now. So I loved it. And then last Stephen King I read of the month was The Outsider, which I also gave 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really like this book. This book is about this thing that we'll just call it the outsider, and it basically can take on the exact look of a person. So when you start the novel, there's this guy who's a coach and he's really well beloved, and so he's being framed for this really disgusting and gruesome murder and of this little boy. And so he's like, nah, I didn't do it. And the police like, yeah bitch, you did. He's like, nah. And then he reveals this evidence of why he didn't do it, and they're like, shit, it is him. Like, we got this, people, like, people saw him, and he's like, nah bitch, but people also saw me there. So then they're like, well, you know, and then they figure out it's this thing called The Outsider. And this book actually scared me. This book scared the life out of me. There was a scene in the book where the daughter of the guy who's been accused, she's like in her room, and this guy comes up to her, looks exactly like her dad, but it doesn't have any eyes. And I'm just sitting in the dark, and I like look behind me, and I'm like, bitch, if it's something in the dark right now, you better fucking leave, because I'm gonna put up a fight, you know. And also my brother had his window open, so his door kept like rattling when I turned my light. I was fighting for my life. I was scared, okay? So I really liked this. It was very good. I did get spoiled for Mr. Mercedes. When people talk about this book, they're like, oh, like it spoils Mr. Mercedes, and they say it on like a way that like it's not a big spoiler. No bitch, it's a big spoiler. So if you have not read Mr. Mercedes, do not read this unless you don't care to read Mr. Mercedes, like ever at all, because it's a big spoiler, okay? So I have read it. It was gonna be on my this month, but I ended up finishing it in November, like 2 days into November. So I'm counting for November, and I am going to be reading some other Stephen King books. Stay tuned for November to see what else I read, because I just guess I'm obsessed with Stephen King. Who would have thought? Who would have thought I'm a Stephen King girl now? But yeah, that's it for this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video.